One of the things about being handy with cars is your family knows it. And cars are expensive. Fixing cars is expensive. So if you're handy with cars, your family comes up to you a lot and says, hey, I need help. And I've got projects, that I like doing, but I've also got a lot of family stuff to take care of. And I've been doing a lot of work on the family's cars lately, but today I've got to protect my own sanity, and I've got to get out here and do something for me. So I'm going to work on the rest of what I need to prep this block. And I've been thinking about it, and I've built a couple engines before without taking them to the machine shop, and I'm about 50-50 on getting burned. But this block, I'm not seeing any evidence of anything wrong, and it looks nice and clean. I think I'm going to skip the machine shop on this engine. I'm going to hone the cylinders, I'm going to tap the threads, and I'm going to start putting it back together. I've got my parts handy, it's just a matter of doing it. I did go to pull apart the other day. I was trying to figure out what camshaft to put in here. If you've seen one of my previous videos, I've got the cheap roller cam set up. Basically I went to pull apart and got all the parts to put a roller cam in here. But I need to get a roller cam for it. And my intention was to build this thing pretty wild and put a really big cam in here. But right now that's not in the works. I want to get a stroker kit for it. I want to get some AFR heads, and that's down the road money-wise. So I'm going to put this thing together with a factory Vortec camshaft, which is a little bit bigger than the factory TBI camshaft. And with the Vortec cam and the L98 heads, it won't be as powerful as a Vortec. It'll have, a nice amount of torque. It'll be a good running motor for now. And then later on, whenever I do the upgrades on it, I'll have the stuff I need. I would like to get a stud kit for this thing, but again, if I'm going to upgrade this to displayed 4-bolt mains, there's no sense in putting a stud kit in it now. Cylinder head stud kit I may get still, I don't know. I haven't ordered it yet, and looking at the budget for this month, it's not going to work out this month. But I can get everything else done and get this engine mostly together. All right, when it comes to honing, first you want to knock all this crap out of the bores. I've got tons of just garbage in here, and I've got an old rag here that's already full of garbage. I'm going to use it to do the first cleaning. Then I'm going to come behind it with a cleaner rag and do a second cleaning. And when I go to hone it, I'm going to use some, I think I got some transmission fluid and Marvel Mister oil mixed together. I may use for a honing fluid. And I'm going to hone it, and then I'm going to wipe it out with a even cleaner rag. These bores are not pretty. There's plenty of corrosion in them. But we'll see how they come out. Now, as far as what kind of hone, some guys like the old dingleberry hone. I much prefer the bar hone. There's plenty of videos out there by guys who are smarter than me explaining why. Basically, the dingleberry hones are good for deglazing a cylinder that's glazed, not necessarily worn. With the bar hone, the bars tend to stay straight up and down, and so if your cylinder has any kind of outer roundness, you'll see it immediately with this. And the bar hone allows you to hone it to where everything's nice and parallel. If there's just a little bit of wear, this will straighten it out. A dingleberry hone, you stick it in there, you're still going to have the funny wear because the dingleberries are going to conform to the shape of the cylinder, each one individually. This will bridge over a low spot and take down the high spot. So the main thing is when you're using this, if you've ever worked with a small block Chevy, you know at the bottom of the bore, I don't know if you can see, let me check. At the bottom of the bore, you have the main journals, and it shrouds part of the cylinder. So if you're honing with one of these, and you come down far enough, you can hit that, and you can tear up the end of your stone. So whenever you're honing, you want to know how deep you can go. And honestly, you've got about a ½ inch of play there. So looking here, this brass colored piece here, when it's flush with the deck of the block, I'm hitting. So I don't want to take it all the way down flush to the block. If I take it down right about there, my stones are coming out of the end of the cylinder. So I want to know when I'm doing it, I want to bring it up outside of the block. You don't want to bring it up so far that it pops out and does like that on you. But I'm going to be going between here and here. That's the extent of my stroke when I'm honing. So check these things out before you go to hone. Know what your depth is going to be. All right, I just did 10 passes just to see where that would get me. And it's starting to clean up the bore. I could see nice cross hatching here. But here where the rust is, I'm still seeing some rust stains. I don't know if you can see those on there. Let's widen this down. There we go. So there's still some rust stains. I'm gonna do 10 more passes and see where that gets me. And notice when you're doing the hone, if you get off like this, it's gonna change how you're boring. You wanna keep it centered, or keep it, honing, not boring, but you want to get a nice even distribution of the pressure on all sides. Okay, I've still got some pitting, but it's looking a lot nicer. And it doesn't look like it's going to clean up with 50 passes, but I'm going to do 10 more runs, and I'm going to call it good. It may not have a perfect crosshatch in there, but that little bit of pitting there, you know how fast that's going to fill up with those rings that are on there? I mean, ring material ends up in any groove you have in there anyways. So, would it be nice to have it nice and perfect? Oh yeah, I'd love for it to, but I don't want to take off so much that I'm worried about my piston size, and I know what'll run and what won't. All right, I'm gonna call that good. And I'll show you what I got here. And that's what the bore looks like done. So this stuff here is just means you've wiped off. So I could go further and hone it. Honestly, this is a temporary build because I do want to bore this block and stroke it in the future. But this is going to be down the road for 50,000 miles or however long until I can afford the parts I want. Alright, you know the old saying, do as I say, not as I do. I got a little too close down the bottom and I broke off the end of one of my stones. I believe I have the original stones out of this which I had to replace because I broke off one of the ends. So I'll probably end up swapping one of those on here, but you know, that's the only issue I have with this bar hone, is that you get in there too deep and you hit that main web and it breaks the stone. And that's a small block Chevy problem. I'm not sure what other engines have that problem. I don't think my big block Cadillac had that. I don't remember it. It may have. But anyways, I've got it honed. These two cylinders look the worst. Everything else looks nice. It didn't all clean up. You know, there's some staining. But for what I'm doing, you know, just putting together a motor to go, you know, down the road a ways. Oh, that one does look rough. But this will get me down the road, and here in 50,000 miles or so, you know, I'll rebuild this engine again and put what I want in it. So, cheap $350, you know, you do what you got to do. Boring the block would cost me a couple $100. And then the new pistons on top of it. Now, I'm just going to put the stock pistons right back in it and run it, and it'll run just fine. And so, nobody's going to know that I didn't clean up the cylinders until they had a perfect amount of cross-hatching. You could drive it, and you wouldn't notice any difference in power. It'll run fine, it'll run strong, and it'll get me down the road a ways until I'm ready to go back in and do a complete refresh. All right, now that I've got all the block holes chased, I've got the bores honed, I'm going to leave this engine nice and dirty and greasy. Right before I go to do final reassembly, I'll wheel it outside and I'll use a pressure washer on it and knock all the crap off of it. But right now, these freshly honed bores with all the oil and dirt still on them, and you know, the metal dust from honing them, it's protected. It's not going to rust. Dirty, greasy parts don't rust. When you get them nice and clean and they're in a humid environment, they'll rust up instantly. This, though, is freshly, you know, worked on. There's grease, dirt, and muck all over it. I'm going to leave it as it is. When it comes time, I'll clean it off.